Mrs. B. I would like to start my introductions with my father on my left, a second grade friend of ours, my sister Hannah, and my mother on the right. The person behind the camera is my sister Joanna. With the presentation out of the way, I would like to start my speech on why mature games should not be available to children younger than 17. With the introduction of video games in the early 1970s, the world has slowly become more and more integrated into a tech-savvy world. With the newest additions to virtual reality, we are taking more steps towards full emulation, a barrier in which we are able to blur the lines between reality and fiction. It makes you wonder what the effects are on the young children that play such games meant for these systems. It isn't too uncommon these days to go to a school in America and hear about a child saying about their kill streaks in a popular video game series called Call of Duty. But what I want to bring to your attention is the danger of letting adolescents get engrossed in such violent M-rated games. After all, the reason why they got that rating in the first place should be for a good reason, right? According to ERSB, the entertainment rating system, a M-rated game contains, quote, content that is generally suitable for ages 17 and up. The reason for such a strict age setting is because the content is described to contain blood and gore, violence, and oftentimes language and alcoholism. A fine example of this is the popular game called Battlefield 1, which makes a mockery of World War I that is one of the most brutal and gruesome battles in our history. Extensive research has been conducted on these mature games, and I've compiled some of them into my speech. Having children playing these games is a matter of desensitization that can lead children to believe that their brother can simply respawn after they shoot him out of aggression. By not only removing such games from access to these young children, we can help improve their childhood with other substitutes as well. If this generation doesn't stop this technological amalgamate of video games, then soon the world won't be able to tell the difference between either of them. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's take a look at what M-rated games used to be. Presenting Death Race, which was a popular game that featured gremlins that would be run over by the player. Upon death, the gremlin would start screaming out, and a tombstone would spawn which would kill the player if they ran into it. This was deemed by the National Safety Council as gross. However, the game wasn't that popular, and it was soon taken off of the market. But what the rating system truly was needed for was a game called Mortal Kombat. This game received the very first M rating for its fatalities that featured players separating heads from torsos. It even contained vivid scenes where the players would punch each other to death. On May 20th, Kipling Kinkle killed his parents and students after playing Doom, which is another violent game which released around the same time. Another laughable comparison is another controversial game, which is from the year 1992, underneath the term Night Trap. It was a video game adaptation on a group of women on a slumber party being hunted by vampires. Classic horror movie, right? The player was put in charge of protecting these women, which is a good concept for a video game by them setting out random traps and preventing the vampires from reaching the women. However, as the game continued on, a certain game over screen which featured one of the women in a nightgown was eventually put off of the market because the person was assaulted by the vampires. Nowadays, however, it isn't too uncommon to see a game where women are portrayed in gypsy clothes material or other indecent exposure which should not be allowed to younger audiences. And yet, they are. The issue is even more alarming when you realize that almost this entire generation plays games not meant for their age. According to Danielle Dahl and Amanda Fry in their document, The Effect of Video Games on Child Development, in America, 81% of youth play at least once a month. 8.5% of them are addicted, and the average 8 to 12-year-old now plays 13 hours of video games per week, while the average 13 to 18-year-old plays 14 hours of video games per week. This information is from 2007, and from what I've gathered in records from 2015 and 2016, the number has jumped up to around 90 to 92%. Both the AAP and AACP reason, according to the Harvard Medical School, that children learn by observing, mimicking, and adopting behaviors, which can become worrisome when what they are supposed to be copying is from a fictional universe where players are violent and oftentimes rated to mob bosses than actual people. These worlds are supposed to represent a darker side of humanity, and yet this is what we are giving to our younger audiences. If we are to stop this indoctrination, the best step is to replace a child's entertainment with something better. A greater solution is to engage them in a sport or activity, which can give your child large benefits. If your child does well in football or soccer, you can oftentimes land scholarships, which pay for some, if not all, of your education in college. If you play the piano, your reflexes increase while allowing better hand-eye coordination. Even in cultures like China, education is preferred above all else, including entertainment. The extent to that is limiting them to possibly 1 or 2 hours on a Saturday. That's it. The outcome of this is they have the highest education system that make America's education look puny in comparison. However, not every game is bad. So why not replace the bad titles with some puzzle games, or games that encourage healthy relationships with other players? The extent to which you let your child indulge in crass materials is equivalent to the amount of research you do into these mature games. So in conclusion, I believe we can change this next generation for the greater good by limiting access to mature content in video games. Vigilance is needed in order to take steps to increase our children's potential for the future. Because we let another cycle slip through into indulgence, we might have a generation that believes stop signs are truly spelt SOTP. Thank you, Mrs. B, for listening.